Welcome back to the At Home Author Podcast. My name is Vicki Weber, and if you are wanting to write and publish children's picture books, you might be wondering which publishing route is best. The answer might surprise you because it depends on you. A lot of people will ask me which publishing route is best, and the reality is that what might be the best publishing route for one person might not be the best publishing route for another person. It comes down to your budget, your values, your schedule, and what you are willing to learn and do or not do. So I have been published both traditionally and I have also been a best-selling self-published author. I do both simultaneously, but I do that as an author, not with a book. A single book can only be published one way or the other at a time. Now, if you are still on the fence and you're not sure which route you want to choose, I highly recommend you look at my blog post that dives into the 8 factors to consider when you are making this decision. But today in this podcast, I'm going to focus on just a few of the biggest factors that I see and tear down some of the myths that surround them. One common misconception is that publishing is expensive. It might be, but it really depends on a lot of factors. First of all, traditional publishing is 100% free to the author. That does not mean it's free to the publisher, however. They are going to need to fund illustrations and, formatting and book design, and maybe even some marketing efforts depending on the size of the publisher. So it is going to cost them money, but they pay you for your story. Now, self-publishing, on the other hand, means that you are the publisher, which means you have all the expenses and responsibilities of a publisher. So if you do not know what you are doing when you're self-publishing, then you need to spend the time learning, or you need to hire somebody to help you out. For example, if you don't know how to illustrate, if you are not an artist, then you will need to hire a freelance illustrator, just for example. So that means that if you choose traditional publishing, it's not going to be as expensive as if you were to choose self-publishing. Self-publishing, no matter how you dice it, if you want to see a return on your investment, you are going to need to put in some money. Now, you don't need to put in an insane amount. You don't need to put in 5 figures necessarily. But if you try to cut corners, a lot of times that will also cut the quality. And I have seen multiple times authors who tried to get expenses down actually ended up costing themselves more money in the long run because they tried to cheap out instead of find someone in their budget. For example, I've had some authors go and find a cheap illustrator and pay $25 a page, not thinking anything of it. And what they got in return was clip art that they legally could not use in their book, which meant they then had to get the whole book re-illustrated. That's just one example, but there are lots of possibilities. And when you're self-publishing, you don't know what you don't know. So you need to take the time and slow down, learn as much as you can, and join some author communities where you can get some support from other people who are going through the exact same things as you. So money is obviously one huge factor, but it's more complicated than that. Each publishing route has a lot of pros and cons to consider. The other misconception I see about these publishing routes is creative control. A publisher is not very likely to ask you to make changes to your manuscript. Now, it's not impossible, but what is more likely to happen is they will just say no. So let's say you get a literary agent and your agent is pitching your story to publishers. If they have some concerns or they don't like some aspect of it, they're just going to say, we're going to pass on this manuscript and move on. If there is something that they want you to change, they'll ask, prior to a contract, would your author be willing to make this change? But usually those changes are small and you haven't signed a contract yet, so there's no expectation on either end. You could just as easily say no and move on with your day. So if you're wanting to work with a traditional publisher, it's unlikely that they're going to want you to make major changes to your story. It's more likely they're just going to pass on it. If you're self-publishing, you do have more creative control. In fact, you have all the creative control, but that also means you have all the creative control. That can be a little bit overwhelming, especially when it comes down to all the nitty-gritty. When I was starting out, I had no idea that the text had to be specific heights and it had to be certain distances from the edge of the page. I had no idea what formatting was or what bleed was or what gutter was. And because of that, I did not initially hire an illustrator who also knew those things, which made my life much more difficult down the line. And it resulted in a book that wasn't as high quality as I'd imagined. Considering how personal writing and publishing children's books are, that can be a hard hit, especially if it's your first book or just an early book of yours. So if you want to see a return on that self-publishing investment, you first need to learn a lot and take your time doing it. When you self-publish, you are calling the shots as far as the timeline. So don't feel like you need to race anything or you need to beat something else to the punch or you need to move at lightning speeds, because the truth is you just don't. As long as you are taking steps in the right direction, you will get there, but time is your friend. In fact, a lot of people think that self-publishing should only take a few months. While sure, it can in some cases, for the average author to self-publish a book and do it well and see a return on their investment, it could take anywhere from 6 months to a year or even longer. In fact, illustrations alone take about 2 to 3 months, and that's assuming the illustrator can even start right away. And there are so many things that come before illustrations. So, all this to say, if you are deciding between traditional publishing and self-publishing, consider all of the facts. Consider all of the pros and cons, and then take a hard look at yourself. How much time do you have to commit? How much money do you have to commit? How involved do you want to be in the production and publication process? How hands-off do you want to be? How many hats do you want to wear, and what is important to you? The truth is that's going to be different for every single person. So this is not a decision to take lightly, but you can be published both ways if that's your choice. You would just need to consider each manuscript and which route would be best for that particular book at that particular time. So with that, I hope that this has been encouraging. I hope that you take a look at yourself and think about what is going to be best for you, because in the end, that's all that really matters. Thanks for listening to the At Home Author Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to get notified when we release new episodes. Reviews are always appreciated. For more helpful content on getting your book published or successfully marketed, visit athomeauthor.com for all of our resources. See you next time.